Okay, we are back to part 2. This is the third video. This is Tovia Singer, the Nashville debate, Isaiah 2, continuing on. Heard Tovia Singer's Nashville conference debate with an evangelical scholar who presented excellent points. Click on that link and you can watch this debate yourself. Highly encourage you to do so. But what is lacked was the necessary understanding of how to navigate Isaiah 2, as well as Zechariah 9, which, according to Tovia, are foundational. Since, according to him, Christians cannot address and leave out Zechariah 9:10 while explaining verse 9, in reference to Jesus coming on a donkey. So in order to gain support, he brought in Isaiah 2 regarding the Messianic kingdom in reference to the whole world accepting Judaism. But Isaiah presents the matter in the latter days. And clearly this scenario will be fulfilled in reference to the decision that was rendered at the end of the 70 weeks. They will receive what they always wanted as well. And this is also tied into the probationary times of the Gentiles, as Luke 21:24, because this prophecy presents the kairoi of the nations, who are now given over into deception, which the two witnesses must clear up just prior to the outpouring of God's wrath in the form of the 7 last plagues. The tip-off is found in the statement, a law will come out of Jerusalem city, and this matches the great city scenario of Revelation 11, 1-12. Tovia used Zechariah 9, saying that Christians use the prophecy of the Messiah riding on a donkey, yet deny what is stated in verse 10. Do you understand immediately the implications of Zechariah 9:10? Okay, so verse 9 applies to Jesus, who clearly fulfilled that prophecy. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, thy king cometh unto thee. He is just and having salvation, lowly and riding upon an ass, even upon a colt, the foal of an ass. Verse 10 applies to Messiah ben David. And should be linked with Daniel 11:45, which is the end of Beni Ephraim, for none shall help him. Ben Ephraim is an elite individual with claims to the Davidic bloodlines, and the airport murals reveal the rest with Darth Vader figure under the feet of Beni David, which equals the 8th king of Revelation 17, as well as the fact that Darth is seen in the setting of Daniel 11:40-45. Then Beni David is seen in reference to what is stated in the UN about weapons of war, turned into implements of farming. And I will cut off the chariot from Ephraim, and the horse from Jerusalem, and the battle bow shall be cut off, and he shall speak peace unto the nations, and his dominion shall be from sea to sea, and from the river to the ends of the earth. This happens when Beni Ephraim enters the glorious land as deliverer. Fact is, Christians who encounter Tovia don't know how to navigate around Isaiah 2 and Zechariah 9, 9, and 10. Zechariah 9, 9, and 10 is somewhat like the two goats, but in this case, it's the beast in contrast to Jesus, who comes in peace. Whereas the scenario of Zechariah 9:10 then equals the 8th king, who brings down Beni Ephraim, which equals the 7th king of Revelation 17. Because remember, the 7th king receives a deadly wound. The scenario of Zechariah 9:10 is replaced by Revelation 19:19 through 20. And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war with him that sat upon the horse and against his army. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought the signs in his sight, wherewith he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that had worshipped his image. They too were cast alive into the lake of fire that burneth with brimstone. Simple presentation, Isaiah 2. One of the main issues is to be able to refute the monotheism of Rabbi Japheth and the Friday keepers, imams. Keep in mind the monotheistic Nicene Creed at this time is irrelevant due to Revelation 17:16. Isaiah 2 is a pivotal scenario, especially when it comes to the 8th king, Beni David, with things like the way of living, the law announced from the great city. It says people from many places will go there and say, "Come, let's go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the temple of the God of Jacob. Then God will teach us his way of living. We will follow him. His teaching, the Lord's message, will begin in Jerusalem the Mount, Zion, and will go out to all the world. Then God will act as judge to end arguments between nations. He will decide what is right for people from many lands. They will stop using their weapons for war. They will hammer their swords into plows and use their spears to make tools for harvesting. All fighting between nations will end. They will never again train for war." It's a simple concept. Daniel 9's 70 weeks curse was predicted in Isaiah 2, which does not appear as a curse in the Old Testament on the surface. But the underlying factor of deception in the last days is the law that comes out of Jerusalem city, whereas the law already came from Mount Sinai. Isaiah 2 is the fig tree. The fig tree would be cursed at its corporate close of probation. Yet Jesus warned about its approach in the latter days, which is the summer is nigh, from Luke 21, and warned that if another would come in his own name, that Israel would believe it. Jesus warned that they would kill the prophets and that they would also kill the heir at the time of his arrival at the vineyard. Jesus also stated in Matthew 23, that their house would be left desolate. And yet in Isaiah 2, it is stated, "And it shall come to pass in the latter days that the mountain of Yahweh's house shall be established on the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. And many people shall go and say, Come, and let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem. And he will judge between the nations, and will decide concerning many peoples, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more." Verse 4 is clearly depicted in certain murals that appeared in a certain airport, along with two messianic figures. One who was portrayed wreaking havoc in the Middle East, and he resembled a Darth Vader-like individual who was slaughtering populations in the Middle East and was using the chemical name of a specific gas that was used by the Nazis during World War 2. After this specific scene was over, then there appears another scene depicting a blonde youth, symbolic of a Bavarian, and he is actually receiving all the weapons of the world, which are being bundled in their national flags and being handed to the Asher youth, who then takes the weapons and converts them into implements for farming, thus fulfilling the words of Isaiah 2, verse 4, which are inscribed in the UN Charter for Peace. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. What is interesting about this picture is that most religious scholars have not been able to make the connection between what is stated in the Bible and what is stated in the UN Charter and what was revealed for a brief time in that specific airport. These murals have now been taken down because many travelers were becoming suspicious as to what the symbolism implied. Also, the symbolism implied that there are two messianic figures that will soon appear on the world's scene. Two messiahs in Judaism. These two messiahs are found in Jewish traditional theological folklore in the form of Messiah ben Joseph, or Ephraim, whom Jewish tradition states that he comes from somewhere in Europe. Then there is another tradition about a Messiah ben David. According to this theological folklore, the two messiahs will fight until Ben David comes out victorious. The interesting thing is that these two false messiahs are depicted in Revelation 17:10. The latter portion of the verse indicates that this final scarlet king is the seventh, since the harlot or religious system appears to ride over 7 kings. Then in verse 11, it is stated that the beast is an 8th king and of the 7 and is going to destruction. It says, and the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th and is of the 7 and goeth into perdition. Revelation 13:1-4, in fact, describes the fighting between these two false messiahs as a fatal wound to the 7th that the beast receives. It is none other than the transition of the Holy Roman Empire into the beast that was and is not. Scripture is very clear and states that the church will ride over this final 7th king or Holy Roman Emperor, known as the Grand Monarch, who will be defeated in World War III. The demise of the Holy Roman Empire in the latter days is depicted in Daniel 11:40-45. There is the other false Messiah, whom after the war is presented with the Darth Vader-like figure under his feet. Fact is that the book of Daniel 11 has this to say about this matter. It says, and at that time of the end shall the king of the south contend with him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots and with horsemen and with many ships, and he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass through. He shall enter also into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall be delivered out of his hand. Edom, Moab, chief of the children of Ammon. He shall stretch forth his hand also upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. But he shall have power over the treasures of gold and of silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt. And the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall be at his steps. But tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him, and he shall go forth with great fury to destroy and utterly to sweep away many. And he shall plant the tents of his palace between the seas, and the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end. There's your deadly wound, and none shall help him. This is perfectly revealed in Revelation 11, and then factor into the account that it is stated that the great city would never be divided again. Yet in Revelation 16's earthquake, God said the great city was divided into 3 parts. And there were lightnings and voices and thunders, and there was a great earthquake, such as was not since there was men upon the earth. So great an earthquake, so mighty, and the great city was divided into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell, and Babylon the Great was remembered in the sight of God, to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. Daniel 7:13. Very important. I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. The metaphorical use of Daniel 7:13, one like the Son of Man flying with the clouds of the sky, is really funny, since apart from that specific scene, the Ancient of Days is pictured in a fiery chariot, and books are being opened, and you don't claim that this is metaphorical, since it clearly states that it's Hashem, the Father, who is referenced as being the Ancient of Days. The one flying in the clouds of the sky arrives to where the Ancient of Days' fiery car is stationed in the heavens, and he is given a kingdom that lasts forever and ever, and this is clearly in line with Isaiah 9:6-7. And there is no mention of a people of the clouds or people of roofs, which is a spurious interpretation, considering the fact that there is a latter reference to the saints who are vindicated in reference to the work of one like the Son of Man coming to the Ancient of Days. The reason for him being like the Son of Man involves the prophecy of Isaiah 9:6-7. A child is born, a son is given, and he shall be called Everlasting Father and Prince of Peace. One may recall what is stated in Micah 5, that this individual comes from the days of old, from days of everlasting, which can only be defined by the word eternity and cannot be applied to King David, since David made reference to the Messiah being his Lord. Remember? Psalms 110, 1-4. Which states that the Messiah is of the order of Melchizedek. 11Q13. Do you remember 11Q13? It's the Dead Sea Scroll, and the fact is that this Dead Sea Scroll 11Q13 states that Melchizedek is deity, which means that David's Lord, as in the Lord said to my Lord, is none other than the one who comes in the clouds of the sky, since the scene in Psalms 110, 1-4 presents the 2 powers, and one of those lords is David's Lord. Fact is that Dead Sea Scroll 11Q13 states that Melchizedek is deity, which means that David's Lord, as in the Lord said to my Lord, is none other than the one who comes in the clouds of the sky in Daniel 7. He vindicates the people of God by way of his high priestly ministration, since the scene in Psalms 110 presents the 2 powers, And one of those lords is David's Lord, who is of the order of Melchizedek. The scene is revealed as being in the heavens, which is the very same scene that we see in John 1:1. And there's your link. Have a look at it. Quoting, and it will be proclaimed at the end of the days concerning the captives, as he said to proclaim liberty to the captives, Isaiah 61. Its interpretation is that he will assign them to the sons of heaven and to the inheritance of Melchizedek, for he will cast their lot amid the portions of Melchizedek, who will return to them there and will proclaim to them liberty, forgiving their wrongdoings of all their iniquities. And the day of atonement is the end of the 10th Jubilee, when all the sons of light and the men of the lot of Melchizedek will be atoned for, and a statute concerns them to provide them with their rewards. For this is the moment of the year of grace for Melchizedek, and he will by his strength judge the holy ones of God, executing judgment, as it is written concerning him in the songs of David, who said, Elohim has taken his place in the divine council in the midst of the gods. He holds judgment, and Melchizedek will avenge the vengeance of the judgments of God, and he will drag them from the hand of Belial. The scene of Daniel 7:13 is revealed as being in the heavens, which is the very same scene that we see in John 1:1. The verses of Daniel 7:13 are clearly in context with those who are vindicated by the work of one like the Son of Man, and not a people of the clouds that are handed the kingdom by the Ancient of Days. The role of the saints is that of vindication and not that of a self-righteous people who have replaced one like the Son of Man, and now they are called the people of the clouds, when in fact the true role of the people or saints is that of vindication and not the role of the Messiahship. The role of vindication falls into line in reference to what is stated in Daniel 9's 70-week prophecy. They were either vindicated and accepted, ushering in of everlasting righteousness at the end of the 70th week, or they were spewed out as revealed in Acts 8, which reveals what took place at the end of the 70 weeks. Prophecy, which was the expiration of the 490 years in 34 AD. It is exactly as quoted by Jesus when he was in trial and the high priest swore, and Jesus responded to Caiaphas, the high priest, and he quoted Daniel 7:13. Very important, and lends credence to John 1:1. Psalms 110, 1-4. Critical text for its place is John 1:1 in the setting of the psalm, which also includes the incarnation and the final retaking of his former glory by way of the order of Melchizedek. The Lord said unto my Lord, sit thou at my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool. The Lord shall send the rod of thy strength out of Zion, rule thou in the midst of thine enemies. Thy people shall be willing in the day of thy power. In the beauties of holiness, from the womb of the morning, thou hast the dew of thy youth. The Lord hath sworn, and will not repent. Thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. Psalms 110, 1-4, just like John 1:1, are the major defenders, clinchers of two powers theology, since Psalms 110 presents the seating together of the two Lords, and that is a pre-incarnate scene, as is John 1:1. And from Psalms 110, verse 4, notice that after the introduction of the two Lords, one at the side of the other, then one of them is sent. Yahweh will send forth a rod of thy strength out of Zion. Rule thou in the midst of thine enemies. This runs parallel to John 1:9, which says, there was the true light, even the light which lighteth every man coming into the world. Yet the context of Psalms 110:2 appears to be Revelation 19, which equals power and holy array, where the following is stated. Thy people offer themselves willingly in the day of thy power, in holy array, as well as at the moment of the resurrection and transformation. Yet, the second portion of verse 3 reverts to the metaphor of the womb and birth in reference to the introduction of the firstborn, where the angels are told to worship him in the flesh, which is in reference to Micah 5. But behold, but thou, Bethlehem Ephratah, which art little to be among the thousands of Judah, out of thee shall one come forth unto me that is to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth are from of old, from everlasting. This verse in Psalms 110, which alludes to womb and birth, as in the incarnation, is also synonymous with Isaiah 9:6-9. A child is born, a son is given. The final statement, Psalms 110, 1-4, and alludes to Hebrews 5. So Christ also glorified not himself to be made an high priest, but he that spake unto him, Thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee. As he saith also in another place, Thou art a priest forever, after the order of Melchizedek, who in the days of his flesh, having offered up prayers and supplications with strong crying and tears, unto him that was able to save him from death, and having been heard for his godly fear, though he was a son, yet learned he obedience by the things which he suffered, and having been made perfect, he became unto all them that obey him the author of eternal salvation. Named of God a high priest, after the order of Melchizedek. As well as Hebrews 6:20. Whither as a forerunner Jesus entered for us, having become a high priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. The statement in Psalm regarding the dew of thy youth appears to reflect what is stated in John 1:14. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, glory as of the only begotten from the Father, full of grace and truth. Conclusion: Tovia's attacks are based on different subjects that may well have to be addressed, but the most important one that brings down his deck of cards was everlasting righteousness in relation to Daniel's 9's 70 weeks, and from that one prophetic aspect, everything else flows and is intimately linked with the info in Revelation 13 regarding the books, and all whose names are not written will worship the beast and dragon. That, my friends, is the end of part 2. Stay tuned for part 3. Any questions? Our email is in the box below. Contact us. God bless. Until next time.